Just for those, if there's any on the call with us or any watching us, there are 2 or 3 regulatory matters, and then the real last item on the agenda is a presentation of what we're proposing to do with the Warren Pohl farm that was purchased by the town last fall. So the first item is, are there any items to come before the Conservation Commission this evening that are not on the agenda? Hearing none, the first item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 7 Grace Street for a garage addition. Chris, do you want to read the notice, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the legal notice. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, the Town of Chelmsford Conservation Commission will conduct a remote public hearing on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. to consider the following application. Under the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Chelmsford Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 187, the Chelmsford Commission will conduct a virtual public meeting for a request for determination of applicability filed by Paul Catalano. The applicant wishes to construct an in-law addition at 7 Grace Street. Work will take place within 100 feet of a wetland.
Is the applicant here this evening? Katie, can you just quickly take us through this and summarize your comments, please?
Yep. So first of all, the lot is undersized, so we don't have to consider the 50-foot. It's a proposed 24 by 24 garage with an in-law above it attached to the house. There'll be a deck off of that, a 6 by 12 deck. And then on the back of the house, which is out of our jurisdiction, they're going to bump it out a little bit by 2 feet by 12 feet. They're also putting a second story on the house, but that does not apply to us as far as jurisdiction goes. It'll be within 100 feet of the lake, mostly within 100 feet of the lake. It's on existing flat lawn, and there's also a non-developed paper street between the lot and the edge of the lake. And they propose silt fence between work and the lake. I only suggest that we require material to be stored outside of the 100 foot.
Very good.
And other than that, a -3.
And the addition looks like, the addition itself, although it's not jurisdictional, the addition is further away from Freeman Lake than the basic house anyhow, so.
Correct.
And I take it, and the lot's probably pretty flat there, is that correct?
That's
Although
correct,
you said
yes.
there are silt fences.
Yep.
I have no comments or questions. How about on the board? Mark Gibbs?
No, I don't have anything, just our usual things, that's all.
Chris Garahan?
No concerns, Dave.
Carl Bischoff?
No concerns.
John Swenson?
I'm all set with that.
Okay, Billy?
I'm good, Dave.
Any comments or questions from the audience on the application? I'll entertain a -3 on this
Dave,
request for determination. Chris?
Dave, I make a motion that we issue a -3 determination approval, also with a condition that the material storage shall be outside 100 feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Billy Vines. Any discussion or comments? All in favor? Mark?
Hey,
Chris Garahan?
Yes.
Carl Bischoff?
Aye.
John Swenson?
Aye.
Bill Vines?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Passes. Very good. Next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for a minor change to the drainage ditch maintenance proposal that we saw a few weeks ago for Manwell Balsam Drive. Christina, I see you're there. Do you want to just make a comment?
Sure. Good evening. Christina Papadopoulos, Town Engineer. So you've already heard this proposal, and after submitting the NOI, we did hear back from DEP, and I spoke to the agent reviewing it, which is Alicia Galen, on the phone, just to understand what it is that they wanted some more information. And essentially all the things they were asking for were things that you as a board had already asked me about during the meeting. I just didn't put it in writing when I submitted my NOI. Again, just not really knowing what to do with this process. It's a new process for us to have to submit NOIs for each of these ditches. So I basically summarized everything that we spoke about. It was no new information was presented to DEP, and I sent them a supplemental letter just describing what we had talked about, which was, you know, the methods of obstructing the debris in the ditch, and what we're going to do with the material once we removed it, and that there wasn't going to be any digging, there wouldn't be any, no excavators would be in the wetlands and things like that.
And so I take it your letter is the minor change? The letter itself?
I believe so. So I spoke to Katie Gerton about it.
Katie, when we
like
call
this
this a
time.
minor change, is the letter she submitted to DEP, is that the minor change? The letter itself?
Actually, the minor change, so you guys already approved an order of conditions.
Right,
And
right.
we didn't do any special conditions, so I'd like to put some special conditions on it, just so DEP is satisfied. Special conditions such as most work done by hand. I will be notified when work starts in the different sections. Christina, what were some of the, did we think of any other ones to cover?
Whatever you feel is appropriate. I mean, I outlined it in the,
Yeah.
you know, my
So,
summary.
dewatering plan shall be submitted if needed.
If we need one,
Other
yeah.
things they were asking about. Just
Mhm.
some special conditions to bulk up the order of conditions.
Katie, do you have her letter to DEP in front of you? Could you just check off the paragraph you're talking about? I know there's one on the second page, which is the dewatering comment.
So, yep, so the dewatering comment, we can make that a special condition to be notified if dewatering is necessary and have a plan. And then the second paragraph from the top about using chainsaws, kind of handwork, work will be done by hand, could be a condition. And then, let's see. The off-site disposal of material, we should put that as a condition. That's below the dewatering paragraph.
Okay, so those are three.
Yep. And then notifying the agent at the start of work in the different sections.
And
I think that should probably just make the order of conditions look a little more like we're like we're paying attention more to what their comments are.
Okay, so there'll be 4 special orders of conditions in the minor change. The use of chainsaws and handwork, the dewatering activities, removing materials from the site, and the notification of the agent of the start of work. Are there comments from the commission? Mark?
You don't expect to use any equipment in there? Probably not. Is that what you think, Christina?
For this ditch, we don't feel that we will need to use any equipment in there.
So we shouldn't say anything about the mats you're gonna put down if you need them, just assume we're not going to.
I included that if I do need to get close with a vehicle, we'll put down mats.
Okay,
We
That's what I
don't
like to have.
anticipate to, but we don't, you know, this is not something we typically, you know, would have to specify inch by inch what exactly we're going to be doing. We just, if there's a fallen tree between now and when we go to clear it, if there's something there, we're going to clear it out, you know.
Right. I understand. Okay, I'm good.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yes?
Also, DEP was concerned about resource area determination, and the commission was happy with what was presented as far as what the GIS shows, because it's pretty obvious being a ditch. We could put a special condition saying that the commission is in agreement with what was presented for resource area, something like that. I could word it so that the commission is fine with what was shown as resource area or buffer zones as presented at the public hearing, something. Because that was one of their comments about having to delineate the entire ditch when it's literally a ditch that has obvious edges that we
Right.
approved. So something like along that line.
I think you can add that. I wouldn't call it a special condition, but I think saying what you did is probably a good idea. Chris
All right,
Carey?
I'll make something.
Okay, Chris.
Dave, yeah, so that would be a good finding of fact that we could add. So not a condition, but a finding of fact that,
I'm glad we got a lawyer on the.
there we go. But no, I'm fine, Dave.
Okay. Carl? Any comments? I can't hear you. You still on mute, Carl? I can't
I
hear
thought
you.
I was off mute.
Okay, Billy?
Yeah. All
I'm
set.
fine, Dave.
John?
I'm fine.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to amend, as a minor change, the application for the notice of intent application for Manwell and Balsam Drive to add 4 special conditions that are referenced in the letter from the engineer to DEP. One concerning the use of chainsaws to cut shrubs and trees, the dewatering activities as needed, to remove materials from the culvert and drain line off-site, to notify the agent of the start of work, and then not as a special condition, but a what did you call it, Chris?
Finding of fact.
Finding of fact that as Katie mentioned. Can I have a motion to that effect to accept those special orders and the finding of fact, please?
So move, Dave.
Moved by Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Is there any discussion? Are there any comments from the audience on these changes? Okay, to the vote, all in favor, Mark Gibbs, Chris Garahan,
Aye.
Carl Bischoff,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Billy Vines,
Aye.
Dave McLaughlin, aye. Very good. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for the construction of a home at 74 Parkerville Road. Is the applicant here?
He is. Jeff Bram. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jeff.
It's good to see some of you I haven't seen. Exactly. Nice to see you all.
Long time no see.
Thank you.
How are things in New Hampshire? Wow, you still live in Chelmsford, right?
I live in Carlisle, just over the line.
All right.
Yep.
Your office is still in,
Westford.
oh,
So-
you had one time you had one in New Hampshire, so now you're.
Yeah, we have a Salem, New Hampshire office too. Everything's kind of the same.
Okay. You want to tell us what you want to do, please?
Sure,
Dave,
is there a way I
Dave,
could
we've got a legal notice here.
I'm sorry, Chris. Yes, you're right.
Mr. Chairman, under the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Chelmsford Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 187, the Chelmsford Conservation Commission will conduct a remote public meeting on December 15, 2020 at 7 p.m. for a notice of intent filed by Mr. Jeffrey Brem. The applicant wishes to construct a single-family home with utilities at 74 Parkerville Road. Work will take place within 100 feet of a wetland. Okay, Dave.
Thank you. Apologies.
No.
Jeff,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a way I could share my screen?
you
Mr.
have to ask
Host?
Katie.
Hold on 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, you should be all set.
I can. Okay. So here is the plan of land. It's always best to have a plan in front of you. It's the same plan you have. We just added some colors to it to make it a little easier to read. I will tell you that there are some abutters in the audience, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you.
So the project is on the town line of Chelmsford and Westford on Parkerville Road. Once you hit Westford, it becomes South Chelmsford Road. Basically, this is where I drive every day to work. This is the 4-H grounds right here to the west of the plan. And these are the last two lots, well, the proposed last two lots in Chelmsford prior to Westford. You may know this if you've driven by here for the last couple decades as 7th Lane. 7th Lane is a small paved roadway that accesses currently the Baker property here. There's also the Run property out front, which comes off of a driveway off of Parkerville. Previous owners to this, the Moonies and others had used this as a campsite. If you recall, there were kind of goldish yellow camps on here. There were 3 camps, one where my hand is here, one here, and one here. The 3 camps were used sporadically over the, God, probably 100, almost 100 years now. And as part of our project, we had originally proposed turning the project into a sort of a condominium style use and reconfiguring those 3 units. Went to the Board of Appeals for several hearings. Bottom line is we nixed that plan, made an agreement with our neighbors, the Bakers, which are here at the end of 7th Lane, and are proposing 2 lots. The 2 lots were granted various variances by the Board of Appeals, so they are single in-fee lots. Part of our agreement was to not use 7th Lane anymore after construction, and to instead create a new driveway here, driveways for each of the dwellings. And the first house at 72 Parkerville Road is under construction now, if you've driven by there, and the house is here. What we're proposing is a driveway, just a 10-foot driveway to the back property, again, off of 7th Lane, but its own separate driveway, and basically to build a new dwelling, generally in the same location as the old dwelling. The old dwelling was actually on the property line, right at the top of my hand here. The 4-H grounds supported this plan in a letter to the Board of Appeals. Well, they supported various plans, but this plan, mainly because there were some structures that were over the property line. This was on the property line, basically over. There were some trailers. This building was over the property line. There was some other garage type storage buildings over the property line. All those have been removed because there was asbestos around on the roof and in the windowsills, the window caulking and so forth. We had to get an asbestos removal abatement plan, and at the last page of your application is a signature page showing that those buildings and asbestos were disposed of properly. So that's all done and over with now. And in accordance with the law, we got building permit for a demo permit for all those buildings, and they've all been now removed. So that brings me to the proposal, which is to basically build a single family house within 100 feet of the wetland. Here is the wetland line, which is Hard Pond. It's very steep. There's some stairs here. There's an old dock. And then the 100-foot line is basically here, right there. And we're working within the 100-foot line. Let me zoom up a little bit. And we're getting as close as 57 feet to the corner of the building, 52 feet to the deck. So we're maintaining your 50-foot minimum setbacks. The side setbacks are 25 feet on this lot. We're not asking for relief of that. So there's 26 feet here, 26 feet here. And the building is a building that we're building currently right now in Westford. It's basically the same 2-story building with a basement, a deck out back. And it's angled to basically get the best view of the pond, as well as getting the north and easting all lined up. So it's basically viewing almost due south. That's it. We have some erosion control devices at the top of the bank. The soils are extremely sandy, as you may know. So we don't expect any kind of erosion problems. There has been no erosion problems here, and I'm building a site in Westford. The last building is being sold next week. And there's never been erosion problems. That site is also all sand as well. That's my presentation.
Thanks, Jeff. Comments or questions? Mark Gibbs?
I can't tell getting close to the house there. I know after the house, you said it drops off significantly. At the end of the driveway, I don't have any topo there. Is water gonna wanna make its way to the pond? Is there gonna be any
Good
kind of
question.
erosion, continuous erosion for that? Rain garden, something like that?
Good question. We don't show any. The water basically goes towards this shed right here. The contours go down. It's very, very flat in this area. And it just basically goes in this direction right here, off the property onto the Middlesex 4-H grounds. And we have obviously a reduction in the impervious area. So we haven't done any rain garden. I could definitely put one in here if that's an issue that you want to do. Actually, it was probably a good idea, Mark.
That's all I saw.
Chris Garahan?
Yeah, just because, Hart Pond's had a history of some aquatic overgrowth in the water, so I'd like to see a prohibition on chemical fertilizers, so we don't get any of that washing into the pond and aggravating that aquatic growth situation. That would be my main concern.
Okay.
Is that all right, Jeff?
That's fine for work. There's very little in the buffer zone, but we could definitely, it's right here. And I have no problem doing that.
Great, excellent.
Carl Bischoff, you have any questions or comments?
Nothing to add.
No,
John
I'm all
Swindon?
set with that.
Billy Vines?
I'm good, David.
Can I just throw something out there again?
Sure, Mark.
I noticed on Katie's notes, is there anything going on with the roof drains, Jeff?
Same thing. Interesting that you bring that up. We do put gutters in all our houses, and we also surround the outside of the house with a 2-foot stone. It's called what do they call those? Drip edges. We do that 2-foot stone drip edge all around the house, and then we dive our gutters into that. So essentially, we're doing the same thing by having those drip edges there.
You
So
don't
it
think there'd
will
be any-
recharge. Basically, it'll recharge into the ground with the drip edge.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else? Hey, Jeff, are you doing any landscaping between the house and the lake?
Nothing exciting. That's the backyard. So just we're going to loam and seed anything that we disturb. That's all.
Okay, because according to Katie, there's a 6-foot drop off, so you want to make sure there's no erosion, so you're not planning any additional landscaping. You're going to use what's there.
Correct.
How many trees are you cutting down on the site?
Oh my God. We've cut a bunch in the front already. I stopped them, by the way, just so you guys know, if you do drive by there, I stopped them from cutting right about here. So we only cut the first lot. They wanted to cut the back lot, but I said, no, not until I go to conservation.
How
And we
about,
weren't ready yet.
are there trees between the proposed house and Freeman Lake?
Oh, yeah.
Are
Yep, there
those,
are.
are you planning to take those down?
There'd just be a few, right? You notice that my limit of work is really high. It's almost basically at the top of the bank. And that's what I want to do. And there may be 1 or 2 little trees here. All these trees here, I would retain on the slope. I wouldn't touch the slope.
Okay, so the trees you're going to take down are between the house and the silt fence?
Correct.
And you said small, 3 inches
Yeah.
to 4 inches?
There's small trees here. There are some very large trees in this area. So mostly pine trees that they'll be coming down obviously for the house and the road and the driveway and so forth. There's also, I should say that the power for this area comes through this sewer easement back in the back of these lots, and they're changing the power to come off of Parkerville Road, National Grid. So that's probably going to go to the selectmen for some new poles in another month or so. So the power to this area, including the 4-H grounds, is going to come from a different direction. Nothing to do with conservation.
Okay. Katie, you referred to a recommendation with special conditions pending revision to plan to show accurate buffers. Are they not shown?
There's a buffer right there.
They have a 35-foot no disturb. And no 30-foot no impervious. It should be 25.
Having trouble hearing you, Katie. I think what she says is our bylaw says 25-foot no disturbance, 30-foot no impervious, and they should be marked on the plan.
Got it.
I think that's what you're saying, Katie, right? Yeah, we seem to have lost her. I see her good-looking face, but I don't see her moving. There she. Did you hear what I said, Katie?
Katie's still,
Okay.
she's still
All right.
muted. Oh, there she is. She's unmuted now.
She nodded.
Katie, you want
Okay. Yeah.
you want the 25-foot no disturbance and the 30-foot no impervious on the plan, correct?
Right.
Got
Okay.
it. Not a problem.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience on this proposal?
So, Mr. Chairman, Gary Baker, I'm the direct abutter.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you again.
Can we have your address, please?
That would be 24 7th Lane.
Okay.
So one of the first things I want to clear up is that 7th Lane is actually my driveway. So it's not a roadway. This is one of the things I want to clear up. Also, the proposal that was brought to the Board of Appeals showed perimeter drains and dry wells for the rain gutter system that I don't see included in this proposal.
And Jeff, do you want to address that? Why you showed something to the Board of Appeals and something different to us?
Yeah, we use, like I said, we use a drip edge now, as opposed to, you're right, the other proposal showed catching and putting into a dry well system. We have it, it's redundant because we use the drip edges on our buildings. The drip edges serve several purposes. Not only do they catch the flow from the roof, but they create a barrier for insects and ants and termites and ticks and so forth, so that they can't get into the house. It's sort of current good practice now to do that. We surround the whole house with a drip edge.
Do you have an obligation? Do you have an obligation to build it the way the Board of Appeals approved it?
Well, what Gary was saying is the first plan that had 3 units required, it showed that. I have no problem putting in a dry well. So if that's something you want to do, we do it all the times. I use 2 Caltech units. I tie everything into it. That's not a problem.
That's probably a stronger, what you're proposing is adequate, but the other one that Mr. Baker refers to and that the Board of Appeals saw is probably a stronger system in terms of its impact on Hart Pond, or
Yep.
lack of impact on Hart Pond. And if you don't mind, then I would appreciate it if you would do that as well with this site, the way you proposed to Board of Appeals.
I have no problem with that.
What does the rest of the commission feel?
I think it's a good idea, Dave.
I think we should be consistent.
Yeah, I like it.
Same here, Dave. I agree with you.
Okay, Mr. Baker, do you have any other comments?
So I would just urge the committee to take a look at the site if they have the opportunity, because it really is quite high, and I'm concerned that the drainage continues in the direction of the 4H as opposed to into the pond and into my adjoining lot. It is quite a bit higher than my lot, so I am concerned. I just want to make sure that I don't have a problem in the future.
Katie, did you visit the site?
No. I haven't.
So nobody's been out to the site? That's probably something we should take a look at, or you should take a look at, Katie. So the concern is that the topography of the site is flowing towards Westford and the 4-H property, not to Hart Pond. And Gary, you're not so sure as to whether it's flowing to your site or not. Is that what your comment was?
I think, I'm more concerned with how close it is to the bank of the pond. I certainly don't want to impact the shoreline of the pond. It does not seem to have a water flow towards my lot at this current time. And I want to make sure that it remains that way.
Okay, this building should not create more runoff to Hart Pond with the roof drains. And with the rain garden off the, I take it the off the turnaround in the driveway. So I would not expect the project to generate more runoff to Hart Pond.
Can I also interject? I thought Katie went on and took a look at it. I thought I can take a look at it. I'm not blaming Katie at all for that. I like to see the trees that you plan on taking down to be put a ribbon around them or something, because I don't want anything stumped back there.
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, we're not in any rush here. Like a lot of people come in, they want to get things right away. We're taking our time. So if you want to delay this a month or so to get all this done, I have no problem with that.
So we can continue this, and the thing to be done between now and the continued meeting is that there will be a site walk conducted by Mark Gibbs and anyone else who wants to join him.
Dave, I'll go out there tomorrow before the snow gets here.
That's what I was gonna do, Billy.
I was gonna
But
say,
I
you
don't-
can do it.
it's- But Jeff may not be able to flag the trees by then.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, correct.
But
But
if you want-
you'll get a good handle of what's going on. And if we
Okay.
put it off for a month, Mr. Chair, I'm fine with that, which will give everybody an opportunity to look at it.
Jeff, are there any stakes out there?
Nope, they're all gone when we cut down the buildings, took down the buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll know where you are pretty well. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You just walk, this house is under construction, you just walk back there. This road is there, so, and then Gary Marine's house is there, so you'll have and this pole is there. You can't miss that pole. So you'll know where you are.
Okay, when's our next meeting, Katie? Let me look at my calendar.
January 5th.
January 5th. Is there any comments, other comments from the audience, other than Mr. Baker? So what we would like the applicant to do is to indicate which trees are coming down. We will do a site walk between now and January 5th, and we will continue until January 5th.
I guess I have one question.
Who is that?
It's Maureen Baker. I live on 24/7 Plain. I'm Gary's
Yes.
wife.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
There was a specification on where the position of the drywall that Gary's talking about was in the concept on the last hearing when it was approved.
The Board of Appeals?
Yeah. Is that going to appear on this plan of January 5th?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I can, I was going to suggest that I make these changes to the plan so everybody clearly has what they have and we don't have to do it through conditions.
Okay, is that all right, Mrs. Baker?
Yeah, and the position of everything will match what was approved by the Board of Appeals?
Yep.
Okay,
It will.
thank you.
And I have a motion to continue the hearing for 74 Parkerville Road until Tuesday, January 5th next year.
So move, Dave.
Moved by Chris
Okay.
Barahan. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Mark,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Carl,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Dave McLaughlin, aye. Very good. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Nice seeing you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Next item on the agenda is a continuance on 24 to 32nd Avenue. Are they here this evening? Katie?
No, they're requesting to continue again. They couldn't get their plans that they needed. There's a miscommunication between the applicant and their landscape designer.
Okay, am I correct in that the Board of Appeals wants to discuss this as a subdivision? I mentioned that. Is that correct?
I think it's planning board.
Planning board, so
I think
they'll
so.
have to, so he'll have to have that hearing before he has one with us?
We were just looking for his landscape plan,
No, you're correct.
and his topography, but they didn't get it in time, so they're asking to continue to the 5th.
Okay. This is the public hearing on 24 to 32nd Ave right now before we continue it, correct? I just would like to make a comment. And I want you guys to think about it. I don't think we need to discuss it. We are seeing a proposal, or have seen a proposal, which gets around our 50-foot no build regulation by connecting the new house to the old house. And that's the way they get around the no build within 50 feet. We have no idea what they plan to do with the old house. There's been no discussion of renovating the old house and incorporating it into the new house. And it stretches the credulity a bit, in my mind, that they would actually want an old cottage
Hey, Dave?
attached to a new 2,300 square foot house. So I want you guys to think about that, if you would. Yes, Kate?
Continuance request, his email to continue,
Yeah,
he told me he is gonna be fixing up the old house.
well, that's good. We'll see it. Okay, that's great. That's just what I wanted to hear. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to continue this one until Tuesday, the 5th of January. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Dave, I move that we continue this hearing to January 5th.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? All in favor? Chris?
Aye.
Mark? Chris?
Aye.
Carl?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Billy?
Aye.
Done. Me, yes. Okay, next item. In your packet, there is a brief, very big picture of Freeman Lake. And every piece that's in orange, is that right, Katie? The town is going to give the Conservation Commission a number of smaller parcels around Freeman Lake, based on the discussion that we had at a prior meeting. I just wanted to include to you guys a picture of where those lots are. At some point in time, we need to figure out what we're going to do with them. They don't lend themselves to being reservations, but we may want to put up the small Chelmsford conservation circles on some of the trees that the residents tear down. We may want to do that. There is one parcel out there that we've never really looked at. It's not this, but these go along to that. We might want to consider making it a pocket park so that it fits into the master plan for the open space. But these are a lot of little non-buildable lots. The town has owned them for years. There we go. I think it's the orange ones, right, Katie? Yeah.
Yes,
You see, there's one that's
Yes.
fairly large there in that piece of the lake. We might want to consider that, turning that into a pocket park and adding it to the inventory in the open space survey. I don't know what, if anything, we can do with any of the others. We probably should mark them and just leave it at that.
Someone's gonna require maintenance over the years or just,
It hasn't had maintenance to date by the town, I don't think. I think what you'll do and we'll do when we get out, when you go out there, you find a lot of people, some people, not a lot, some people have looked at these lots as being part of their land and they may or may not take care of it. You may find property, private property stored on town land there. I'm not suggesting it's a mess. But some of those homes on the other side of Shore Road or the other side of Willis that look to Freeman Lake, think of those, the land on the lake side of those streets as being their private property. I don't think anybody's really abusing it.
well, I don't think we should start policing it because we have no way to enforce it.
I'm not suggesting we do that. That's what I'm saying. Maybe what we might want to do is just to put up some decals that say that it is conservation land and just leave it at that. No, you're right. That big area there on the left looks like it may be wetlands too. So I don't know that you could even use it. We can take, when the springtime comes or when the weather's better, we can kind of wander out there and see if anything. It's just under conservation, so remember, once it's conservation land, it's not easily sold. And the Board of Selectmen and the town manager do this fairly regularly. So that was done, or it will be done, I guess, at Springtown meeting, correct, Kate? I think it's going to be on Springtown meeting.
yes, correct.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All right, next item on the agenda is a discussion of the Warren Pohl Conservation Reservation Plan. It's my intention tonight to make a presentation to the commission of the work that's been done by Mark Gibbs, Carl Bischoff, and myself, taking a look at the 54 odd acres. What are you putting that up for? That's another. That we've done, taking a look at the property and making some suggestions to the commission as to how we should proceed with the Warren Pohl Conservation Reservation. And I would like a vote from the commission tonight to proceed. If not, we'll have to do more work and continue it to a future meeting. Let me just tell you where we are. We are in the process of having preliminary discussions with DPW to construct a parking lot and to install 2 emergency fire gates, which Carl will talk about, and to put electricity onto the property. Electricity was on the property when it was privately owned, and that electricity has been disconnected. And also to put water to a fire hydrant that's on the property. The other thing that's in process is to have this whole site, 54 acres, surveyed. That is necessary in order to execute a conservation restriction, which will have to be developed with a private group of citizens who will hold the conservation restriction. So that's where we are right now. We've had some preliminary, we've also had some preliminary discussions about possibly maintaining the hayfield that's on the site, which is a good 20%, 25% of the site. So Carl, why don't you give us your presentation?
Okay, you hear me okay?
Fine.
Okay. So, the purpose of this is to kind of go through where we are with the recommendations and to gain the agreement from the rest of the Conservation Commission. We've got this divided into two major sections. One is a summary of the input from the community, and the other part is our recommendations. So we'll go through the input first. So the sources of input, we got input from a letter that we sent out. We sent it to about 100 abutters, as well as posted it on the town of Chelmsford website, the social media, Facebook pages, and I know it's been read at least once on the select board public service announcements, I think a couple times even. We've also, I've included information that I gathered as part of Phil Stanway's ad hoc committee back in September. A lot of input came from those sessions that we did at Sunny Meadow Farm. And then we've also got feedback from conversations we've had with people, some emails and some Facebook comments. We've had 25 people at least, if not 30 or so people providing input, and over 50 different items of concern, ideas, and feedback. The two major categories of input and feedback are access, so how we get onto the site and how community members access it, where they might park and walk on the site. And the other one is usage and what we would do with the site, what we can and can't do, should or shouldn't do on the site. So the access input, this is, remember, this is input. This is not our recommendations. This is just what we were hearing from people. In general, very much a lot of support for using Acton Road to access the site. We've been through this a number of times in this meeting. There are 6 different access points to the property, and Acton Road is the one best point of access. And as I think Dave mentioned, we're working with DPW to get a proposal for a parking lot and driveway to that area. There are some concerns with some of the wet area that's there. It's a flood zone. So we have to work through that and make sure that we're compliant with everything, but that's the area that Steve Yunley is working up a proposal. We would also, there is a lot of support also for a pedestrian bicycle access on Boston Road. There was a lot of concern with access via Parker Road, concern with access via Bartlett Street. The other two sites, the other two access points, Hall Road is very difficult access, and Fay Street is very difficult access. So we didn't get much on those. A lot of comments, general comments on signage. People are concerned about signage, especially in the Bartlett Street area, but also on Boston Road. So signs for both, sometimes people say they want signs and sometimes people say they don't want signs, because if you have a sign, sometimes that drives people to actually go in because they didn't even know there was an access there. So we do have to consider all these inputs. The other thing I just want to comment on the bottom, our wording on our letter was a little confusing and wasn't the best wording. We never had any intent, nor could we actually grant any kind of exclusive access to the site for any local residents. That was just worded incorrectly. Of course, all site access points, whatever we make official, would be full public access, which depending on, we'll get to the recommendations. The summary of the usage input. So this is divided into the passive recreation, agriculture, and we had a couple of other random kind of different parts of input. Passive recreation, lots of comments, lots of support for walking trails, bicycling, and cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, that kind of thing, what we call traditional passive recreation. Picnic tables and perennial garden, perhaps. Sculpture park, there was at least one request for some kind of a sculpture park. There was a request for dog off-leash area. Also requests to engage conservation planning experts to develop a long-term plan, as well as a number of ideas for educational opportunities. Then the agriculture. There are a lot of pretty much consistent people were looking for maintaining the open space by haying. If we don't hay it, it will eventually over time grow up, and we would lose the open vista. There was both support and opposition to any kind of commercial farming, artisan farming. There was both support and opposition to beekeeping and orchards. And there was also, we heard some support and opposition to chicken coops. There was also a request for some type of community garden and something called permaculture, which I have to admit I wasn't very familiar with. I did a little research on it. And so these were the kinds of things that were being brought up for usage of the site. And then finally, the other category, we had a couple of comments about making sure that we are ADA compliant and making the site as accessible and really get the ADA engaged and involved. Also, education opportunities, use the site for any kinds of educational opportunities on the history, science type activities, bird counting, bee counting, whatever people want to do for groups, for citizens across the town. And then also some comments about climate impact, that we should make sure we maintain or expand the amount of trees on the site, and also concerned with protecting the water on the site. The Putnam Brook runs right down the middle of it. So that's the input that we got, that we heard. Now we'll go into what we summarized as our recommendations. So for the site access, we've said this before, this is still continuing. Acton Road is the best opportunity we have for main site access. We are hoping to get in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 vehicle parking in that area, if they can make that fit. This would be not really impacting any neighborhood very much. It would be right adjacent to Bartlett Street, but really wouldn't affect Bartlett Street at all. Boston Road, lots of comment. People still really want to get on the site via walking onto the site via Boston Road. We think we can make that work. Both Boston Road and Acton Road would have emergency vehicle access. We probably would be able to get at least a gator in on Acton Road into the site on trails, and Boston Road access, certainly you could get to the barns. We have to have access to the barn and the sheds. So right now, our recommendation would be to not develop any other access points for the property. If we can't make Acton Road work, our plan B is not a very good one, we don't think, but it's probably the only one we have, is to have both Bartlett Street and Boston Road as access. But I think we have to address that. I don't really want to spend too much time on that unless we find Acton Road is not viable. Site usage. So passive recreation is kind of a no-brainer. This would be just consistent with all of our other Conservation Commission sites. Walking trails, trail bicycling, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing. The same rules would apply. No motorized vehicles, no off-leash dogs, that kind of thing. For agriculture, we are talking about, we all agree that we want to keep that, we want to be able to hay the site, haying of the fields. We might consider beekeeping, maple sugaring, and perhaps orchards. I think what we want is minimal or no pesticides if we do that. And then what we're not looking at allowing would be, I guess, what I'm calling crop farming, where you would have annual tilling of the soil and crop planting. And also community garden. We have 2 public community gardens in town. We don't see this as necessarily the right use of this site for a community garden. And then the other usages, these are kind of not so much usage, but recommendations would be to look at having a long-term master plan with some kind of experts. There was some recommendations that we got. Of course, this would be funding dependent. This wouldn't necessarily be anything that we would do in the next 3 months or anything like that, but we would consider this going forward. We would look at solar panels for power for the barn and the shed. We would look, we certainly need to get the conservation restriction going, and we would use that baseline assessment to identify any other opportunities such as tree management, invasive management, things like that. And then last here in that long term would be to make sure that we really understand the water district's request for water pump access or well access. We need to nail down that location as much as we can so that we can prepare for that if that's going to happen down the road. And finally, I think it wouldn't hurt if we reached out or tried to get the Commission on Disabilities to help us with any kind of site planning in terms of what we can do to make sure that the site is ADA compliant and more than just compliant, but really welcoming to anyone in terms of disability. That's really the summary of our recommendations. I'm sorry, I got one more, the signage and trails. So we have trails already. We would, let me talk about the signs. We would have to have a fairly detailed plan for signs. There's a lot of access points, so we need to think about which, even the access points that we don't want to use. Do we want to put a sign there saying no access? Do we want to put a sign that says, Chelmsford Conservation Land? So we need to think that through. And as well as some of the streets, there were comments about Bartlett Road, people on that street wanting to have signs saying, even as far down as High Street, don't access Bartlett Road to get to the Warren Pohl property on Acton Road. So we need to think that through. I'm not sure that makes sense, but we should work with DPW on that, as well as signage on Acton Road. We could even think about a light or a crosswalk, as there are a lot of comments about the speed of vehicles on that road. And if we have cars pulling in and pulling out, there could be some challenges there. And then the trails, we have a lot of trails on the site already, or an adequate amount, but we need to supplement it with at least a connection for a site loop, which probably entails at least one bridge, if not two bridges over the brook. There may be an opportunity for another trail in the woods on the Hall Road side. There's a nice beginning of a trail there that we could maybe take advantage of as well. But other than that, there's not a whole lot else we would add for trails. And then the last thing here is the education. I think what we agreed, Mark and Dave and I talked about this, and we certainly would support any kind of use of the site for things like history of the site, getting the Chelmsford Historical Society perhaps involved. We could reach out to them to see if they want to pull something together. I know Becky Warren would probably be willing to help, and other members of the family, to document history of the site. We can do something about that. And then also any kind of education for any groups in town. We're willing. I think the point here is we're not planning to drive this or make it happen, but we're certainly willing to support any of these kinds of activities of agricultural history or any kind of nature walks, things like that. So those are all, that's the summary of our recommendations. Our next steps are to get this approval, to get the agreement from the rest of the board. We are working on a budget and getting that pulled together, and we would be presenting this, some form of this to the select board, probably in the January timeframe. As I said, our number one priority is the access on Acton Road, and we also have to work with the Land Trust, Dale Williams. We've already had a couple of discussions with him on the conservation restriction. That's probably in the order of 6 months of work, something in that order, sometime middle of next year. Hopefully we would be able to have that completed. That's all I've got. Any questions?
I could just add a couple of comments. I'm concerned about the Acton Road site for parking. There is a lot of wetlands there. You know where it is. It's right next to the pumping station. And between some upland area and the pumping station, there are a lot of wetlands. We might very well be faced with having to fill in up to 5,000 square feet of wetlands and provide compensation. So we, as you know, we would have to file in that case our own notice of intent, which has its own built-in conflicts of interest. We have not hired anybody to work on a notice of intent for us because we don't know yet. And we've asked Steve Yonley to give us a rough sketch of what a parking lot might look like. I was very impressed with how many comments we had in response to seeking input. One of the things you notice when, and in fact, it was probably more than we had for Oak Hill, which was very similar in its nature. Although I think there are more challenges to this site than there was to Oak Hill. I was impressed with the kinds of comments. The one thing I did notice, which did not surprise me, nor should it surprise any of us, is a lot of the recommendations to us as the Conservation Commission involve staffing and spending money, which we have neither of. So we were very careful in agreeing or with anybody's recommendation. I'm of a mind to allow organizations to participate with the Conservation Commission, as we do out, for example, at Russell Mill. But it's difficult for people to ask us to do something when we don't have the financial resources. And frankly, some of the things that people wanted done might even be considered to be a stretch for what the objectives of the Conservation Commission are. But it was well thought out and good input. And a number of comments came from people who were not necessarily abutters. I think haying's going to be a big issue. Haying is important to me and to the other committee members. It certainly keeps the open vista for the Warren Pohl property. As Carl said, if you don't maintain it, you're going to get invasives and you're going to get trees starting to grow. And 100 years from now, that will not be open. That would probably be uplands and wetlands. So we've had discussions with two people. One is Miss Parley, who manages Sheehan Farm, I believe, under a agricultural lease with the town. And she has, on occasion, mowed the property at Warren. And we've had some initial discussions with Mark Duffy, not the Mark Duffy who runs the auto body shop, but the Mark Duffy who ran the cranberry bog for Carlisle. And he has expressed interest. He needs more hay sites for his commercial operation in Carlisle. He's looking for land that he can hay. The biggest problem with haying, Carl is well aware of it, and we've seen it, is that since it has not been actively managed for 25 years, maybe, it has been managed, but not actively managed. What happens is over time, you get frost heaves in the property and all of a sudden rocks start to grow, which is a strange way to describe it, but that's exactly what happens. They cut. And so it's very dangerous and difficult to mow the lawn, mow the fields without getting rid of the stones. But we'll pursue discussions with those two people. Carl made one reference to a longer term plan. I've reached out to the Conway group out in Barrington. Some of you, I don't know, Billy Vines will remember, maybe Chris. We hired the Conway group to do a master plan for Red Wing Farm. back in 2003, believe it or not. It's almost 20 years ago. And they presented a 3-phase plan to develop Red Wing Farm. And believe it or not, we've incorporated a lot of their suggestions and costs over the years has worked to that master plan. So I have no idea what it would cost. I don't even know if we want to do it. I do know a master plan that they would do would probably end up being much more comprehensive than we wanted to do. Did I lose that? No, I did not. The water district reference that Carl made, if you remember the warrant article last fall that approved the purchase of the land, one of the uses of the property was stated in the article as a water source. And the water department put that in at the last minute when they heard about the town showing an interest in buying the property. I talked to Bob Delaney. They have nothing specific in mind for this site, and from the time the warrant article was passed until today, you know that they purchased Misty Meadows, and they are actively developing that site as a water source. But we believe we need to at least make reference to it in the conservation restriction, and we will need to develop. I don't think the water department has any intention of putting a water treatment plant on the site. And frankly, I would be against that. But if they're going to draw water out of the ground and it makes sense, I think we can consider it. Like on ADA, this site lends itself to being ADA accessible, more so perhaps than any of the other sites that we have under our management. There's a federal restriction on ADA that says you can't require ADA compliance if there's more than a 5-degree pitch to any trail. And so much of our property has that. That's why we don't have a lot of ADA. But when you look at the Warren property, at least 3/4 of it is pretty flat, and we would be able to accommodate that. And I think that's a good idea. All of the trails, including the parking lot, would probably be pervious. We would not anticipate using any asphalt. There's no need for that. Another open item, which we'll have to address fairly soon, is what do we name the reservation? And so I'd ask you to think about it. It could be the Warren Reservation. It could be the Warren Pohl Conservation Reservation. It probably ought to have the name. I'm never of a mind really to name it after any living political person in town, or maybe even any recently deceased person. A couple of our properties we have after the fact put names of people who were active in conservation. For example, at Crooked Spring and also out at Lime Quarry. But they also up at Deep Brook. All of those have the name of a person as well as the name of the reservation. And I think most people refer to it as the reservation, not as the person's name. But we ought to give some thought to that. We will have to have a budget for the Springtown meeting, so we'll need to work on some numbers. My gut tells me we're looking at least $30,000. There should be money available from CPC, and there should be some money available, hopefully, from the town. And there may be some money in the original budget to purchase the property. I think, who was it? Carl, you summarized it. What the land was $1.1 million, and we approved $1.15 million.
1.15 was approved, and 1.1 I think was the price, and the 50K difference.
We'll have to tear that apart. So there's some money there for legal expenses and probably for preparing the conservation restriction. Are all of you familiar with what a conservation restriction is? because not all of our property in town that's owned by the Conservation Commission has a conservation restriction. I am not sure as to why something needs a conservation restriction and why something doesn't. For example, Oak Hill does not have a conservation restriction, but we have been informed by the town manager that Warren Pohl must have one. A conservation restriction is held by an entity other than the town. And in our case in Chelmsford, it usually has been the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust. They're the people that own 90 odd acres, the Bovey Park and the
Bartlett Park.
Bartlett Park, and then the farm out on Park Ave. They've got about 90 acres and they've done it. What a conservation restriction does is it says what you cannot do on the conservation land and what you can do. And this independent entity's responsibility is to make sure we as custodians of the property don't violate that restriction. So they kind of look over our shoulders and make sure we're doing and are not doing what's in the conservation restriction. So the next step is I'd like to have a discussion of this. At some point, we need, as a commission, to approve the plan so that Carl and Mark and I and anyone else who wants to work with us can begin to move out and can begin to implement this reservation, which is going to be, I think could very well be the best reservation in Chelmsford. Comments, questions?
Have they flagged the wetlands on Acton Road yet?
Yes,
So he's in the process of putting together a plan.
yes,
So when does he think he'll have that?
this month.
Yeah, I asked him for 2 weeks, but asking Mr. Yarnley for something in 2 weeks is usually a stretch.
I think Acton Road, that's the only parking area that makes sense, really.
Yeah, well, and Bill, the primary reason we picked on Acton Road was the wideness, not only, but also we want a parking lot where the patrol cars can easily look into the parking lot and see if there's any untoward activity. Some of the problems we have is if our parking lots are too far off the main road, the kids fool around in there. So
Right. So I think whatever it takes to put it down there, we need to put our efforts into that.
That's our,
You know,
yep, we agree.
and I appreciate the work you guys did on it. I think the direction you're going is the direction I would support. It looks nice out there now. Keep it the way it looks. Add the trail to make it a loop, and less is best sometimes. But I think I support everything you're doing, and it looks good.
Thanks, Bill.
we will need people to help us maintain it. We have not seen an interest from COS in helping us yet. So that has to be worked on. We can offer them the use of the barn as an inducement to help work with us. And so, but we need to do that because we certainly don't have the resources to maintain that site, nor do we have, and that's why we use cost to maintain the other sites.
Yep.
Who's doing a survey of the whole site?
It's the town surveyor.
DPW, I think Scott's doing it.
Because isn't there a question on a couple of access points of who owns it?
Yeah, there's some,
Paul Road and.
yeah, I guess you'd call it encroachment, or I'm not sure the right term, but from our point of view, until the town resolves that, starting with the survey, we don't want to go near that.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, Billy. On Parker Road, a resident has constructed a driveway and garage which appears to be on Warren Pohl property. And at the end of Hall Road, there's a street called Katy Lane or something. Is that what it's called?
Kate Lane, yeah.
Kate Lane. It's not named after you, Katie.
It's a drive, yeah, pretty much a driveway.
There's a couple of houses down there where driveways are off. And so you're right, Bill. There's two spots where there has been encroachment.
So that's going to be resolved as part of this.
Well, we've asked John Lee to survey those two spots first.
Yep.
Let me ask you a question. You had the bicycling. You're not saying something similar to Russell Mill,
Mill.
right?
No, so I think on all of our sites, we don't, we allow any kind of bicycle on the trail as long as it's not motorcycle.
Right.
So we would do the same thing here. I don't think your serious mountain biker would get too excited about this site. They'd go through it in about 10 minutes and say, well, that was fun.
You're right. The site doesn't lend itself to mountain bike. But Billy, to answer your question, I think having one site in town for mountain biking is probably enough.
Right.
Although that Russell Mills site gets an awful lot of use from non-Chelmsford people now, particularly with the pandemic going on.
Yeah. Right. I just wouldn't want to promote that at this site, something
Yep.
similar.
Gotcha.
No, this is just, if somebody showed up with a bike, we're not stopping them, that's
Right.
fine.
Okay.
But it's not a promotion, no.
No, well, no, it looks good.
Great job, guys, and appreciate, Mark, Carl, and Dave, you guys working hard on this project. I also really like the fact that it's got a strong passive recreation aspect to it, so that's good. So I certainly support what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Chris.
Any other questions or comments?
Katie, you got anything?
No, it looks really good. I'd be interested in working with you on
Okay.
it too.
We're gonna need you, I think, to get that parking lot built.
Yeah, most likely.
You guys should also know that this is a personal goal and objective of the town managers in his agreement with the Board of Selectmen. You know how the board and the town manager set some goals and objectives every year. The implementation of a plan for the Warren Pohl Farm is one of his objectives, which is very good from our perspective because we know he's going to help us. And also he has asked Carl to make a presentation similar to the one we had tonight to the Board of Selectmen. So if you guys approve this and indicate we should proceed along the lines we presented, Carl will book us some time with the Board of Selectmen. And actually, maybe Ms. Timmons can see that happens, since I noticed she's on and she's the Board of Selectmen representative to us.
David, what point do we have the public input?
Schedule if you need help
Well, we've
scheduling.
had the public input. That's all of the emails and all of the responses that Kyle was referring to.
But I mean, present this to the public.
Well, this is doing it tonight. This is why it was on the agenda.
All right.
Carl will make a more formal report on what we're going to do, and we'll include hard copies of all of the comments from the citizens in case somebody wants to reference them.
Yeah, and I'm hoping we have a bit more on the finance side on the budget and Steve, the DPW plans. So we're probably talking sometime in January.
Frankly, right now, the gating item is DPW and can we put a parking lot at Acton item? That's probably the most critical item.
The board meetings in January are on the 4th and the 18th.
Okay, so definitely not the 4th.
So Christina publishes a draft agenda to us on the Wednesday before the meeting, and the final one comes out on Thursday.
Okay, that's good to know. So sometime the week before the 18th.
Carl, why don't you ask You might ask Paul when he would like us to
Yep.
make the presentation.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I want to see how much work Carl has put into this, tremendous amount of work. And you also, David.
No, thank you. Carl's a good addition.
I'm not sure Mark did a whole lot.
Really, I'm not saying you guys don't do your job. Don't apologize.
I'm earning my pay, huh?
Hey, a little something extra in that paycheck, Carl.
There we go.
Well, I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the commission endorse this plan and order full speed ahead.
Second.
Seconded it. Billy did. Any discussion? I thank you guys for your support. All in favor? Mark Gibbs,
Aye.
Chris Garahan,
Yes.
Kyle Bischoff,
Aye.
Don Swenson,
Aye.
and Mr. Vines.
Aye.
And me, an aye. So that passes. Good. Hey, that's all you're on the agenda. Is there anything else anyone wants to bring up other than to have a Merry Christmas?
Yes, I have one thing.
Yeah.
You got a glimpse of it a minute ago, but do you see this now?
Yeah.
So I just want to point out and thank Phil Stanway for pushing the Christmas tree decorating on all the sites. It's been really, really popular. Lots of pictures and
It's
people
been
visiting on.
It's been much bigger this year than it has ever been.
Yeah, he's done a great job making this happen. This one in the middle is really kind of interesting. This is a wrap. There's like a black cloth wrap with needlepoint on it. This is out at the Cranberry Bog on the point, which is to the left, or once you get over the dam, you go to the left. It's pretty interesting, pretty unique. I've never seen that before. But there are, in fact, the Cranberry Bog, I think, has 4 different trees decorated, and other sites have 2 or 3. Every site has at least 1, if not 2 or 3. The other thing is, I know that other towns, I think Tewksbury and I don't know, a few other towns have contacted Phil to kind of steal his idea. And many other towns are doing the same thing. So just kudos to Phil and making all this happen. It's been very popular. Lots of people getting their selfie taken in front of all the trees and all the sites. So anyway, I just want to share that.
Carl, isn't there a contest to try to see who can identify the most number of trees?
I think they do something like that. I think you win like $1 million or something like that.
Just before you mentioned the Cranberry Bog, I will let you know coming up, the Cranberry Bog subcommittee or whatever is having a public hearing where they're proposing to hire a consultant to develop a plan to change the Cranberry Bog from a working cranberry farm to something like open space. I mean, not to use it with any of that stuff, but to try to keep it the way it looks. And since we're in a butter, we will be notified. It probably will be in January, and I'll let you guys know, because I think that's a public hearing that we should, at least a Zoom hearing that we should attend.
Okay.
Anything else, Katie, for us?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for thinking of me again this Christmas. Not necessary, but much appreciated. Thank you.
Good for you.
You're welcome. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Motion to adjourn?
Move.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Done. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas,
See you
everyone.
all next